You great. I want to know how you're great. What makes you great, Skills Report? What makes you great? What makes the 49ers great? What makes them special? Well, first of all, you got a great leader. And you got a few great leaders. When we think about Patrick Willis being inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, one of the first things that come to my mind, outside of his great play, his skills, his sideline-to-sideline ability, his speed, his instincts, his physicality, the way he run right through you, it's leadership. It's leadership. We think about P. Willie, it's leadership. His leadership, everybody fell behind him. Whether it was practice, whether it was game day, everybody fell in line behind Patrick Willis on that defensive side of football. Well, who's the leader of this 49ers team? Well, Fred Warner's definitely one of them. You can see on the top 100, he's ranked 11th overall. He's considered the best linebacker in football, pro football, and it's not even a debate. But who's the leader of this 49er team? Is it Brock? Is it Fred? Is it Kyle Shanahan? Does it have to be a player to be a leader?
Or does it have to be the quarterback? And this is something I'd love to hear from the roasters out there. When you look at this 49ers team, who is the guy you point to and say, that's our leader? 888-957-9570. Call in and give us your opinion on who the leader of this Niners team is. We were chopping that up at the break, and you asked the question, and Joe Hawks here, who's been helping us out this week, literally as soon as the question was asked, Fred Warner. That was his immediate pivot, which I thought was kind of interesting, that a team like this, we immediately go to a defensive player. I look at it and it's like, I think he's right. I'm not trying to discount his point. I think he's absolutely right. Fred Warner is, on the defensive side of the ball, he is hands down the unquestioned leader. As far as the guy that the rest of the team falls in behind, he's definitely right up there. But I do look at Brock Purdy as rising in his leadership stock, because he is a guy that this team has had no trouble falling in behind him.
Let me ask you this, Lubman. Right. And I could ask the roasters this, 888-957-9570. Does your leader have to be a quarterback? Does a leader of the football team have to be the quarterback?
Well, how many in the last, since it's going back to 2000, how many teams have won the Super Bowl, do you think, behind a quarterback who was maybe not the focal point or the number one leader on their team? I mean, a lot of those Super Bowls were obviously Brady, Manning, Roethlisberger.
Seattle. I don't think Russell Wilson was quite the leader yet on that football team.
That was a Richard Sherman, Malcolm Smith, Marshawn Lynch team.
Earl Thomas,
yeah.
Bobby Wagner. I thought Marshawn, I didn't think Russell Wilson was the quote-unquote leader of that football team.
I mean, you listen how some of these guys talk about Russ in hindsight. I mean, I don't know if he ever really truly ascended to
like Andrew Whitworth. Was he the leader of the L.A. Rams when they lost the Super Bowl to the Patriots? Was Aaron Donald the leader of that team? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? When they beat the Bengals, was Stafford the leader? Was Cooper Kupp the leader? Does the leader of your football team have to be a quarterback, or at least offensively? Was it still
Aaron Donald on that 21 team that won it all? Because it felt like when the Rams got that win, when they put on that ring, it seemed like it was, it was congratulations to Aaron Donald in the Los Angeles Rams. It wasn't congratulations to Matt Stafford. It wasn't congratulations to Sean Vay. It was Aaron Donald in the LA Rams. So that's another kind of outlier. But the point I'm getting at here is, you're looking for outliers here in that situation where a quarterback is not your leader. So, it's the Seahawks in 13 had a stacked defense full of leaders. That Rams team was a very veteran-heavy team with a great dynamic leader and a future Hall of Famer in Aaron Donald. But you look at some of these other Super Bowl winners.
2019, for example, was Jimmy Garoppolo the leader of that football team? No chance.
No, I don't think he was.
George Kittle's probably a bigger leader than Jimmy Garoppolo. Fred Warner was still there. Richard Sherman was probably a bigger leader than Jimmy Garoppolo.
Fred was a little too early in his tenure, I think, to really be assuming that.
2019. So you had Richard Sherman back there. You had Richard Sherman back there. You had Bosa as a rookie. You had DeForest Buckner.
I think Kyle Shanahan was probably more the leader of that team.
Wow.
Because that 2019 team, first off, that season came out of nowhere. Like, we knew the Niners were getting better, but I don't think anyone was expecting, a 9-0 start, 13-3 record. They ran over some of the best teams in the league that year. Mm-hmm. It was one of the most dominant regular seasons we've seen a Niners team have in recent memory, and it just kind of came out of nowhere, and it really felt like, all right, this is Kyle Shanahan's master plan finally coming together. And it was great because it was happening, it felt like a year or so earlier than we anticipated. Right. So I would say Shanahan was the focal point of the leader of that 19 team. Right now, though, I definitely feel like it's become more player focused in regards to leadership. So yeah, I would say it's absolutely Fred on the defensive side of the ball, but I do think this is the year where you're going to see it really take hold for Brock Purdy and his ability to lead this team, because I think this 49ers offense has shown if you could lead them up and down the field, they will fall in line behind you. You said that, Jimmy wasn't the leader of that 2019 team. I will agree with you on that, but I will kind of push back in that, guys still fell in behind Jimmy. Guys still really liked Jimmy. I remember when Trey Lance was even under center, when he was able to lead them on a drive, guys, they were all around Trey. They were, dapping him up, patting him on the helmet.
Yeah, but he wasn't the leader of that offense.
No, but I think he
wasn't even voted captain of the football team as a starting quarterback in 2022.
But I think if he had played well, if he, had gotten those chances to really establish himself, I think they would have fallen behind him too.
Yeah,
I always remember.
Think about that, though. They broke camp in 2022. They didn't have a C on his chest. Usually the quarterback has a C. You would think that he has that C on the chest.
Well, that was going to be his first year as a starter.
Well,
so
Brock
I think
Purdy's first year as a starter, he had the C on his chest.
Well, it's
Jimmy
a little bit
Garoppolo's
different.
first year as a starter had a C on his chest.
Well, it's a little bit different, though, because remember, Jimmy in 2017, he arrived here and immediately flipped the tenor of this organization.
No doubt. But what's the difference with Brock Purdy?
I'm going to get there. So Jimmy, he took a 1-9 team, and they won 5 straight, enough to get that contract. Jimmy kind of came here, planted his flag on this team, and said, I'm the quarterback here now. Guys fell in line behind him on that. Brock Purdy, he took over after Jimmy broke his ankle against the Dolphins. First thing he does next week is show up the greatest quarterback of all time, and then leads this team to the NFC title game in Philadelphia, where I think the what we've seen since then, if Brock's elbow doesn't melt down there, the Niners are heading to Glendale after that Sunday.
But Trey was there as a rookie.
But he didn't have the run that...
He didn't have the run, but...
He had the one game against Houston.
Yeah, that kept the season alive. You lose that game, you're not going to the playoffs.
But
you lose that game, and then you have all offseason as the starting quarterback. OTAs, minicamp, and then training camp, and they still broke camp. And he wasn't voted one of the captains.
See, I just don't think that one game was enough for everyone to fall in line behind him. I think
no, it's not just the one game, though. OTAs, minicamp, training camp.
But don't you see it done in the games, though? Practice is one thing. When you're bringing that, if he's balling out in practice and then bringing that to the games, eventually guys will notice, oh, he's a dude out there on this field. Let's fall in line behind him now. If Trey had not gotten hurt in 2022 and led the Niners to a 12-win season, gotten into the playoffs, and then whatever happens after that happens, I feel like we're having a very different conversation in terms of was Trey a leader.
How uncommon, though, or how common is it for a quarterback to break camp and be there all year, going into his second year, break camp, and still not get that C on the chest?
I mean, well, how common is it that a quarterback is in a situation that Trey Lance was in, too?
It's not that common, but
it was a kind of unique situation with Trey.
It was, but usually, Trevor Lawrence, was he a captain his rookie year on the Jacksonville Jaguars without playing a single game? Was he?
I don't remember if he was a captain.
I don't remember he was. I'm wondering how many quarterbacks break camp and don't get that C on their chest.
Well, I think that's when you're the number 1 overall pick. I mean, Trey was the number 3 pick, but he was kind of
top pick.
He was redshirted though, so I think when you kind of put him on the back burner a little bit, then you want him to develop a little bit. I think there was a situation where
I don't think he was on the back burner. Shanahan mentioned in camp, we got a competition.
Well, yeah, but then he abandoned that competition because he didn't know how to call plays for 2 quarterbacks. So I just don't think that Trey was ever really given a regular season opportunity to seize that leadership role in the same way that Jimmy and Brock did. Jimmy and Brock both had 4, 5, 6 game stretches in the regular season.
So you believe that you have to play in the regular season game to assume that leadership role. You have to have a runway in the regular season to assume that captain role.
I think, yeah, you got to show it in the games. Now, I don't want to make that a blanket statement because, you do have those times where your number 1 overall pick comes in and they just put the C on him right away. But keep in mind, when a lot of those number 1 picks show up, like Trevor Lawrence, they're showing up to teams that, by and large, aren't that much better. Because, again, if you're picking number 1 overall, it's, no duh, you weren't very good. Trey Lance was showing up as the number 3 pick to a team that was just in the Super Bowl a year prior. He was showing up to slowly work his way in to we're trying to win a Super Bowl now team. Trevor Lawrence showed up to a team where it's like, we're trying to rebuild this organization around you. All these guys that are here right now, maybe that guy or that guy, he might be here 2-3 years from now. But this team's going to change a lot around you as we build this roster around you going forward over these next 4 or 5 years here as you come out of the draft. So in that situation, it's a lot easier to throw the C on a Trevor Lawrence's chest because you're tabbing him as you're going to lead us forward for these next few years.
All right, that's
when Trey
fair.
Lance got here, though, it was you're going to work your way into what is already a well-oiled machine.
No
so
doubt.
a very different situation there.
Yeah.
So that's why I think...
No doubt he came in like that. I understand that part.
Right.
I understand all that. You're coming to a stacked roster. You have Jimmy Garoppolo. You have Super Bowl aspirations. But they ended the season. And Trey Lance was handed the keys to Carr. And he broke training camp, and he wasn't voted one of the captains, which to me is rare. Like, maybe the team didn't like him, but I just always think, man, I assume that the quarterback's going to break camp as a captain. Your starting quarterback is going to have that C on the chest, and he goes through OTAs and mini camps, and the team gets to know him. He's going through practice or whatnot, and of course they bring Jimmy back, but he's not voted one of the captains. I don't know. It was just kind of strange to me. But Brock Purdy, since we're talking about leadership, he talked about leadership with Tim Kawakami. Here's what Purdy had to say.
It's not like I've walked in and go, all right, year 3, my third year playing here. Now this is my responsibility. No, it's been something over time that, I think I've earned the respect of the guys here by the things that I've done, just how I carry myself in a humble manner. And they want to go to war with that kind of guy. And so it's sort of just naturally come about. But for me, it doesn't mean change or be a rah-rah guy, but be myself and be that competitive leader by nature. And guys want to follow that and go to war with that. So that's how we look at it.
That's how he looks at it. Now, I'm seeing a lot of different answers on YouTube. I'm seeing a lot of different answers on the Xfinity mobile text line. Some people are saying McCaffrey's the leader of this offense. Some are saying Trent Williams is the leader of this offense. Some are saying George Kittle is the leader of this offense. Some say they fall behind Deebo Samuel.
That's interesting. I mean, I feel like there's a difference between the leader of the offense and, your most important player on the offense. Like, Trent Williams is probably the most important player, non-quarterback division on this 49ers offense, just because, I am of the belief that if you don't have an offensive line, you don't have an offense. That's everything.
There's no doubt.
Everything starts in the trenches. You can have the best quarterback, the best receivers, best running back, but if you just got a bunch of softies up there who, can't block anything, your offense ain't going to go anywhere. So Trent Williams, definitely the most important player on that offense in that sense. But, guys like Kittle, Deebo, Ayuk, CMC, who aren't on the can you be the leader of the team when you aren't on the field every play? And I don't mean that as a negative against. Guys, on the offense, they got to come in and out. They can't be in every play.
Right.
But Trent and Brock are two of the only guys on the offense who are both playing at a high level, but also they need to be on the field for every snap.
Last year felt like McCaffrey was on the field for every snap.
That is true.
Right?
We were kind of worried about it.
Everybody was talking about his touches last year. He was on the field a lot. He had to, and when he did leave the field, he didn't want to leave the field. So I don't know. I don't know.
I want to hear the roasters on this. So 888-957-9570. Do you need to see the quarterback be your leader? How does a quarterback become the leader? Who is the 49ers leader? I would love to hear it. I want to hear some other opinions on this.
This is a great point because, and I'm going to read this text from the 408 on the Xfinity Mobile text line. Listening to Andre Johnson yesterday, he's getting inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, longtime Houston Texan, great Miami Hurricane. They asked him, how did you lead? And he said, I just led. I wasn't a rah-rah guy. I led by example. The guy in front of me, the guy behind me, I wanted to push them by just showing how hard I worked, how hard I practiced, how hard I ran my routes, how hard I run blocked, how hard I put into this game, how much work you put into the game. It's like I wanted my actions to show how hard I worked, and I wanted my actions to show how much I will lead. I'm going to lead by working my ass off and being the best of my ability. So the 408 on the Xfinity Mobile text line, he kind of makes a good point here. There's vocal leaders, and there's also guys that lead by example. There's vocal leaders and guys who lead by example. So McCaffrey's not a rah-rah guy, right? Mm-hmm. He's a guy who's going to lead by example and play his ass off and not take a rep off and go 100% no matter what. Brennan Ayuk, I don't think he's a leader on this team, but you think about guys like Christian McCaffrey, who's not a vocal leader, but he's going to lead by example. Sometimes those are the best leaders for your football team.
Yeah, but I think that doesn't really apply to a quarterback, though. You probably need a guy who can yell at guys in the huddle and kind of use your voice to get guys to fall in line behind you.
Was Jimmy ever that guy?
I think Jimmy did study under the great Tom Brady. He does know what it takes for a quarterback to get in the huddle and command guys. Now, did he have that command the same way that Brock Purdy has? Like, I think what I like about Brock is he knows that leadership isn't guaranteed. He has to earn it. And so I think Brock knows, he has to find it within himself to kind of establish himself as that leader. Mm-hmm. With Trey Lance, though, I think another issue with Trey, then I think this kind of plays into why he wasn't a captain coming out of training camp, was that what I watched Trey play when I looked at him, I never saw a guy who was like going to tell someone to shut up in a huddle so I can read the play off here. Like,
that's important.
He never struck me as someone who was going to use his voice to get guys to fall in line behind him. Now, would that have changed if he had, never got hurt, leads the Niners to a very good start in 2022 and leads them to a successful season? Does, playing well, does that build up his confidence to the point where he is using his voice to get guys to fall in line behind him? That's unfortunately one of the great, mysteries in the universe that we'll never know.
This is great.
What happened there?
650. Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls without yelling at teammates. He would get guys into play. Hey, we need to do this, but he wasn't I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to do all that and blah, blah, blah. Now, Aaron Rodgers is a little different. Peyton Manning's a little different, a little more commanding, a little more demanding, I should say, as he commanded the huddle.
Obviously, He's the standard.
No doubt. No doubt, Tom Brady.
Roethlisberger, I remember, was Roethlisberger ever a shouty guy? I don't remember.
A little bit of both, but he just made plays from what I remember.
He's kind of had a presence, too.
Right. He made plays, and his actions by taking all those sacks, that was leadership. He took a physical. He got beat up in the pocket.
Steelers got a little bit of a different culture, too, that he fit in well with.
You think about their defense and their linebackers and all that.
Like James Harrison was probably more of a leader on those Steelers teams.
That's what I'm saying, their defense and their linebackers or whatnot.
So a slightly different situation. I think the Ravens, we were talking about, that Ravens team earlier in the show with Joe Flacco. Like Ray Lewis and Ed Reed were the leaders of that Ravens Super Bowl team, not Joe Flacco.
But when I hear that cut from Brock Purdy, taking a leadership role, and the way he responded to Kawakami asking him about, hey, man, were you on board with Tom Brady coming up? And he was like, well, I felt like I did enough to be the starter. This is my team. And I love that mentality from Brock Purdy, saying this is my offense. The hell with Tom Brady. And Kyle Shanahan told him that before he had the elbow surgery. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to kick the surgery in the ass and I'm going to work my ass off. You know what? Brock Purdy was ready to go on the first day of training camp. Could not believe it. Could not believe it. Starting in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So that to me, even one of my, that may have got him to see. He was like, whoa, wait a minute here. He just had Tommy John surgery. Hasn't been able to practice. He comes back. He's coming into training camp. He plays in the first game against the Pittsburgh Steelers and boom, takes off. That's leadership. Maybe that's a guy who's like, look, I want to be the Tom Brady of this football team. He mentioned it. And he wasn't on board. And I love that. I love that about Brock Purdy. I love that about Brock Purdy and all the players, 707 saying, Brock is the leader. Debo Warjack saying Brock is MVP. Trent Williams glows about him. We heard Brendan Ayuk on the Pivot podcast saying, you know what? This guy is a good quarterback. I mean, he is legit.
That is a good point because, obviously quarterback gets a little bit more fanfare, but, how often do you see these guys? The way they talk about, Brock Purdy, how often are we seeing these guys kind of taking that same attitude towards their other teammates? Like, who is out, how many guys are out there talking up Brandon Ayuk for being such a great guy and leading? And again, I'm not saying that Brandon Ayuk isn't a great guy.
He's a quiet guy.
He's a quiet guy. But like, you don't see a lot of guys talking up Debo Samuel as a leader out there.
I don't know about that. I don't know. Be careful with that one.
Okay, all right.
Be careful with that one because a lot of these players, including Kyle Shanahan, the head coach of the football team, Debo's kind of our heart and soul. Our identity revolves around Debo Samuel. You know why?
So is he kind of like I hate to go down this road. Is he kind of like the Warriors' Draymond Green type in that he has that, chip on his shoulder attitude, that toughness? We say heart and whenever someone says heart and soul of a team, the first thing I think of is always Draymond Green because he was the heart and soul of those great Warriors teams. So does Debo kind of have like a similar?
Absolutely. At the end, you think about where Shanahan says, our game plans are catered around Debo. A lot of the motioning him out of the backfield, the jet sweeps,
emotional
getting
leader.
Him the ball, the emotional leader, the physical leader, and that's why he has a C on his jersey. Don't forget, he has a captain. Yeah. He has a C on his jersey, and Debo hasn't missed a practice yet. since OTAs, man, he's been here. Freaking Debo and the physical tone he sets. That's why we talk about tone setters, right? Early in football games, who's going to set a tone? Who's going to set a tone? With George Kittle, Debo Samuel, right away, they get the ball. They're trying to run through your face. They're trying to run you over. And what that does to a sideline, when a guy has a chance to either go out of bounds or run through a defender, and they decide, you know what, I'm going to run through a defender, that sideline gets up and says, you know what, I need to strap up my helmet. I need to go. I need to step up my level of play. Debo Samuel is so damn important to this offense. He's one of those guys, too, where you may see, well, Debo only had 3 catches, 33 yards. But the gravity that he pulls and the impact that he has within that huddle, there's no doubt Debo Samuel is one of the leaders of this football team. There's no doubt whatsoever. And they fall in line behind him. Mm-hmm. This team Jawan Jennings falls in line behind him.
And there's a lead by example aspect to that, too, because when you see a guy out there running as hard as Debo is, hitting guys as hard as Debo is, not wanting to go off the field like Debo doesn't want to go off the field, like, if he's balling out as hard as he is, if you're a football player, you're thinking to yourself, well, what's my excuse? Like, if he's playing up to that level, if I want to be great, I got to match that intensity. And that's how you start elevating guys around you. So in sort of that sense, yeah, I see Debo, I see Kittle. They are those kind of, forever vocal they might be, the way they lead is what they do on the field, setting that tone with how they play the game, though. So that's what I like about them. Ayuk, again, he's more of a quieter guy. I don't know if he's
he's not the lead. He's just going to go out there and ball.
Is it kind of hard to be a leader?
Like, that's why I look at
Is it hard to say you're a leader when you're holding in like he is, though? Like,
no, I mean,
do you hold that against them, like Debo a couple years ago? Do you
I don't hold
dock him for that?
I don't hold it against them because you got to go get your money. You got to go get your money. And the players inside that locker room, they understand that. All right, shameless shout-outs coming up in 5 minutes. Line them up. I want to see your phone calls. 888-957-9570. 888-957-9570 is the number. Adrian Gutierrez on YouTube. What up, Adrian? The NFL is a quarterback league. The quarterback handles the ball on every play. You need a quarterback to be a leader of the offense. That may be the case. I can subscribe to that right there. 888-957-957 is the number for shameless shoutouts.
Yeah, what about the comment right above him, Mike? Can he stay on the field, though? When you think leadership, I mean, do you think of a guy where if he is absent, missing games, is that, again, just if we're fleshing out what makes a leader here. When you are absent for whatever reason, injuries or other, does that kind of take it away? Or
No, because your impact is felt when you are injured. And if you're injured, working your ass off being on the football field,
that's a good point.
Look, your leader's out. You know, we got to step up without our leader. That kind of rallies a team when your guy like Debo Samuel gets hurt. So, you know, Debo, you think about the guys who are running out the tunnel with the boom box. Who's the first guys out of the tunnel?
187 on the YouTube chat. They do follow Debo out of the tunnel with that boom box.
Debo and Trent.
I think that does kind of set
Debo and Trent.
That does set like the emotional tone of what you're about to, like, if you're, the other team, you see those guys coming out, massive Trent Williams, Debo with that boombox, like, there's a swagger to that too.
No doubt.
Like, there's just a badassness about that. That's how you set a tone.
As I think about Brandon Ayuk, and there was rumors about him re-signing or coming up with a new deal yesterday with John Lynch and company because of the body language that he had. He was good with Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch the other day. Niners will hit the practice field again today. They had the day off yesterday. They'll be back on the field today. But the leadership, when you brought up Ayuk and, is he really a leader and this and that, you know what? The way, and somebody brought this up. Who brought this up? 650. He sets the standard on how much wide receiver blocking on the team is expected. Brandon Ayuk is a three-down wide receiver who gets his nose dirty and gets physical with DBs. He'll crack down on linebackers. He'll try to block a linebacker. Falls in line with what George Kittle does. Falls in line with what some of these guys does. Kyle Juszczyk being a fullback. We don't talk about his leadership in the backfield, being a fullback and sacrificing everything, even taking pay cuts like he did this past offseason. So very, very interesting. Now, Joey Fleming saying Kyle is the leader of what? Because he always wants to be in the spotlight. All right. Maybe Kyle Shanahan is the leader. He is the head coach.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting how, we're so deep in this conversation, and that's kind of like the first time Kyle's been brought up in regards to being leader of this team during this conversation. I mentioned earlier, Kyle, he was kind of the leader of that 2019 team. Yep. We're talking about who's the team leader right now. We just mentioned Kyle Shanahan. So are we at the point where, the players now are, the focal points and the leaders over Kyle Shanahan, which I think that's what you want. You want your players to be the face. You want your players to be the leaders of your team over your head coach. I mean, that's not to diminish the head coach there, but the NFL, we care about players. The
players have to control the locker room. They got to police the locker room. They got to police the huddle. The head coach is going to be the head coach. He's going to be the head honcho and make sure everything is running smoothly. But the players have to police the locker room. They got to make sure their locker room is in order. So who's checking everybody in that locker room? 888-957-9570 is a number for shameless shout-outs. Line them up. I see your calls coming in right now. 888-957-9570 is a number. Before we get into shameless shout-outs, this is very interesting. Was Shanahan trying to motivate Brock Purdy with the Brady talks? Here's what Purdy had to say about that with Tim Kawakami.
I think we were just having an honest conversation about the whole thing. I think that when he was bringing that up, it was when it was before surgery. It was before I even had surgery or anything, so we had no idea what my timeline was like or anything. But, there was the competitive side of it for me. I was like, dude, I just, proved for 8-9 games that I can be the guy for this organization, but at the same time they need a guy for next year if I wasn't able to make it back in time.
There it is with Brock. 650, do we know how much Brock is allowed to change the play at the line of scrimmage? Not allowed. Shanahan doesn't like his quarterbacks to do it. Just doesn't like him to do it. So not much, but if he does build a better rapport with Shanahan and does what he did last season, I believe he will have a little more autonomy, but Shanahan's a stickler for that stuff, 650. He doesn't like his quarterback changing plays. Maybe he can change the protection here or there, but Shanahan's not with that. He wants his quarterback to run the play that is called because he believes his play that is called has an answer for everything, whether it's a blitz or zone or man D, doesn't matter. He believes he has the answer. So that's where we're at with the quarterback and changing the play at the line of scrimmage. All right, 888-957-9570 is the number. Cam Emmett coming up at 8 o'clock. Let's get to shameless shout-outs.